Welcome to Everyday Linux User. In today's video I'm going to show you how to set up KVM and Virt Manager onto a Linux machine. Now KVM and Virt Manager will enable you to run virtual machines on your hardware, and I've started using this on a lot of my videos instead of using VirtualBox. It works better as a native hypervisor than VirtualBox does. So it's something I've become used to, and if you're a Linux user I recommend using Virt Manager and KVM over VirtualBox. If you're using Windows then continue to use VirtualBox. So anyway, let's open up a terminal window. I've increased the font to make this easier to see. So the first thing we're going to do is now this assumes you're using a Debian based distribution or a Ubuntu based distribution. So Debian, Ubuntu, Linux Mint, Zorin, any one of those sort of things will work. MX Linux, whichever distribution you're using. So sudo apt update. That will make sure you've got all your latest repositories up to date. And then we're going to do sudo apt upgrade. And that'll get you to the latest versions. With that done, the first thing we're going to do is install a piece of software called QEMU KVM, and that's your hypervisor. That's your underlying thing that's going to enable you to run virtual machines on your system. So obviously it's sudo apt install QEMU KVM. And the next thing we're going to install is a package called libvirt daemon system. So out of interest, QEMU, that is emulation. KVM is your hardware acceleration. Then you've got this libvirt daemon, and this is for managing the virtual machines. Next we're going to install libvirt clients. And you can see that's already installed on the system. Now libvirt clients enables you to manage your virtual machines from the command line. And the next thing we're going to do is install bridge utils. And what that enables you to do is bridge your network between your host machine and the virtual machines. And finally, we're going to install the software called Virt Manager. Now, this is the graphical tool you're going to use to actually manage your virtual machines. And you'll see me using this a lot in the videos that I create. We now have all the software installed, so the next thing to do is set up some user permissions. So we're going to do sudo add user and then your username. So in my case Gary, and I'm going to add myself to the libvirt group. And I also need to add myself to the KVM group. So sudo add user Gary KVM. Obviously you put your username, not mine. We can check that the libvirt is running properly. Sudo system control status libvirtd does that, and you can see that seems to be working perfectly fine. Incidentally, if it's not running, you can just simply do system control start and then libvirtd. And then you can run the status control. After you've started it, you'd run that command and then you'd enable it as well. And that would then get your libvirtd up and running. Now you should be able to launch Virt Manager. You can run it either from the command line like this. It'll take a few seconds to connect on the very first time, but you can see that's working now. Or you should be able to, if you've got a desktop environment, be able to pick it from the menu. So you can see it's there in the menu system. So now we've got Virt Manager and KVM up and running, what we need to do is create a virtual machine. So the first thing you're going to need to do is go and get yourself a Linux distribution. Now a good place to start for any distro hopper is distrowatch.com. So because this machine's quite underpowered, the one I'm using at the moment, I want a very lightweight distribution. So I'm going to be going for Linux Lite. And I'm going to click the download. So here I am downloading the ISO image now. So Linux Lite has now finished downloading, so we can now create our first virtual machine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on here, I'm going to click on the new button. And it says, how would you like to install the operating system? I'm going to use local media, which is the ISO image I just downloaded. I'm going to click forward. Then I'm going to click on browse. And then I'm going to click on browse local. And if I go to the downloads folder, you see I've got Linux Lite, and I just double click on that, and that appears in the box. Now it tries to automatically detect which version of Linux you're using. If it doesn't find it, what you need to do is just start searching. But if in doubt, just type General Linux. And that generally works, and we can click forward. And it may say the emulator may not have search permissions for the path where you've downloaded it. You can click yes, and then it's saying how much memory do you want to use. Now this is an underpowered PC, so I'm just going to give it 2 gigabytes. I'm just going to give it two CPUs, and I'm going to click forward. Now it says, do you want to create a drive for your virtual machine? Yes, I do. Now you can either leave the defaults here, or you can select here and select manage, and then you can choose where you want to put the virtual machine. So if I wanted to put it in a different folder, I could click there, and I could give that folder a name, and you can see where it's going to put it. So in this case it's going to be in the file directory, but you can put it to a physical device, etc. So let's call this test. Click finished. And the location it's going to put the files is this folder here. And I can add a disk in there. So I'm going to put, you can see I've got a very small amount of available space for this. So I'm just going to leave it at 20 gigabytes. In fact, I'm going to take it down to 15. And if I click finish, it will create that drive, and then I can choose that volume, and then I can click forward. Or if I just wanted to have the default folder where I'm going to put it, then all I would do is click that option there. I'm going to click forward, haven't done that, and then you can give your distribution a name. So I'm going to call it Lite, and I click finish. It says virtual network default is not active. Would you like to start the network? Yes, you would. That will share your network with the virtual machine so that it's got internet access. It's now creating the virtual machine. You can see it's booted into Linux Lite. So now what you want to do is choose the boot option for Linux Lite, and you can scale the display so you can resize to VM like that, or you can do full screen. You can see more about the operating system. You can go to the console. You can have it scale display always, only when full screen, or never. You can take a screenshot, and you can send keys to the virtual machine. So like if you wanted to send Control-Alt-Delete, you could do that. You can see that Linux Lite is loaded now into live mode, so I can go full screen. And you can see that the display isn't quite right, but what you can do is go into settings and go into display. Now this bit differs from distribution to distribution, but generally it's something like this, and you can change the resolution just like that. So now I can install Linux Lite. So this isn't really a Linux Lite tutorial, but I'll quickly go through the install. Choose your language, choose your keyboard layout. So now it's asking whether you want to download updates or install third-party software. So we're going to say yes to both of those, click continue. Now it's asking you where you want to install it. I'm going to use erase the disk and install Linux. Now this is the virtual disk, it's not your actual disk, it's just the virtual one that you created earlier. So you're safe to click install now. And then just click continue. Now it's asking you where you are in the world. It's already picked where I am. So click continue. These dots show you how far through the installation process you are. The next screen is going to be user setup. So I'm going to create a user, call the machine Linux Lite, and then create a password. And then I'll click continue. And that's it installing. So finally it's finished installing. Took a while because I've only put 2 GB of RAM. And then I can now click restart. And it should start automatically, and it should remove the ISO image, so it should boot straight into Linux Lite. So again, it's not remembered the screen resolution, but we know how to change that. Just go to display settings. You won't have to do this every time, it's just the first time after installing. From now on it should boot it into that resolution. Now we can close this down, and a few things to note. So down here you'll see network, and it will come through as a wired connection. So even if you're on Wi-Fi on your host PC, it will come through to your virtual machine as a wired connection. So what happens if you want to connect to a wireless connection? So to be able to use a wireless network, you're going to need to use a Wi-Fi dongle, and a USB one should work. And what you need to do is just insert that into the USB drive on your machine. Now at any point in time you can get out of full screen mode by coming up to the top here and clicking this little icon here. And if you click here you get to the details. Now if I want to share the USB device that I've just inserted, what I need to do is click add hardware, and then I'll go USB host device, and you'll see these are the ones available. So I'm going to add my Wi-Fi adapter in, and then I'm going to add in another one, and I'm going to add in the Bluetooth adapter. And you'll quite often see me doing this on my videos when doing reviews. So now if I want to go back to my virtual machine, I can go here, and I should be able to click on here, and it should show my Wi-Fi networks. So that's how you do that, and I should be able to do Bluetooth as well. Obviously you're at the mercy to a certain degree of the distribution you're running and the capabilities of that distribution. Now I haven't got any Bluetooth devices plugged in, but you can see that would work if I did. Now printing should work automatically, but if you're in some cases you have to type in the IP address if it's the network printer. Now what if I want to share a folder from my computer? So if I go into the file manager here, you can see I've got my virtual DVD, virtual hard disk, and the general file system. So I can go to my Gary folder, but I haven't got access to the host PC at this point in time. But you can change that. So if I go into here and I click add hardware again, I can go down to file system. You want 30FS, but before you do that you are going to need to enable shared memory. Click apply, but this will only take effect after the next gets shut down. So what we're going to do is we're going to shut down the virtual machine, and then we're going to add in the file system that you want to share. Now enabling the shared memory only needs to take place once, and then you can add as many file systems in as you want. But let's shut down the virtual machine, and we can do that by clicking the menu, clicking here, and we can use the general functionality of the distro to do this. Incidentally, you can also force a shutdown by going to the shutdown here and clicking force off. You'd only do that in severe situations. So now shared memory is available. We can go back to adding our file system in, and we want Virtio FS, and you choose where you want what you want to share. So if I want to share, for instance, my documents folder for the Gary user, I click that, and then I need to give it a name. So I could call it Gary Documents. And you can make it read only if you want to. And then I click finish. So now if I boot up my virtual machine, so we're going to go full screen mode here. And what we're going to do is open up a terminal window. And we are going to make a new folder. So if you do cd/mount, there's no folders in there, so we're going to make a folder, and we're going to call sudo make dir like that, and then you want to give it a name, so we can call it Gary Docs like that. Now to share from the host PC to your virtual machine, what you type is sudo mount -t, and then you have to type in the type of file system it is, so Virtio FS. Now remember when we went here and we created the file system, you can see the driver is Virtio FS, which is where we get that from. And now what we want to do is the name of the folder that we want to share, and then we want to type in the name of the folder we want the files to appear in. So Gary Documents is the share from the host PC, which we put in this target path here, and Gary Docs is the folder we created here. So if I do that, and I go to, now I can do cd mount Gary Docs, and of course there's nothing in there. And the reason for that is if I go into my actual PC on my host and go to Gary Documents, I haven't got any files in there. But now if I create a document and create an empty file and call it test, click create, and in there it's opened it as a LibreOffice document for some reason. I'll type the word test document, and we're going to save it as a text document like that. We're going to close it, and if we go back to our virtual machine and do an ls, you can see there's a folder called test. There's a file called test. So if I do nano on test, you can see it's got test document, which is the file that we shared. Now it doesn't have to be test documents, it could be images, it can be videos, it can be all sorts of files that are in those folders. And you can share multiple folders, it doesn't have to be one. It may complain when you remove devices that you've shared, that the device is no longer available. i.e. if you're using a USB dongle and you remove the dongle, next time you boot it might throw up a message. So if that happens, all you need to do is find the piece of hardware or the file system that is offending, click on it, and then you can click remove. So in this case, it's this device here, physical USB device. I want to click remove on that one, and I want to click remove on that one. So that's the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth shares that I put up earlier on. Now another thing you might want to do, you might want to boot the live CD again. So if you go into boot options, you can see disk 1 is my virtual hard drive and CD-ROM is the virtual CD-ROM drive. Now if I want to boot from the ISO image again, what I can do is I can shift that above the disk, so it will try and boot from the CD-ROM first, and if it can't get there it will boot from disk 1. So from the CD-ROM you have to save the changes. From the CD-ROM I can go down here and I can click the ISO image again, or indeed I can pick another ISO image or another file if I so wish to do so. And so now the next time I boot, it's going to boot into the USB drive first. And of course you can change that back, so it'll boot from disk 1 and then CD-ROM, and change it back so it boots from the host PC. If when you create your virtual drive you realise that it isn't big enough and you need to do it again, what you can do is you can remove the disk you have, and then you can click add hardware, and then you can click storage, and then you can use the same screen as before to create a new storage device. So you can make it 20 gigabytes or 40 gigabytes, and then you can install it that way. I don't think it's actually possible to extend the size of the current disk, but I'm not sure about that. With the boot options, you can also enable a boot menu like so. So what we're going to do is you can see we've got disk 1 and CD-ROM. So under CD-ROM we've got the Linux Lite ISO, or we've got the actual disk which has got Linux Lite on it. So we're going to go into the machine and we're going to reboot. So if I click start now, escape for boot menu, and there you go. When I press the escape key, I've now got the choice of the DVD or the hard drive. I've also got a legacy option ROM and a network thing, but the first two are the ones which, so that's the ISO image, number 1, and number 2 is a hard drive. So if I pick number 2, it's going to boot from the virtual hard disk, and that's going to just boot into general Linux Lite. So other things you can do from the virtual machine, you can take a screenshot and you can save that screenshot wherever you want. So if I wanted to, I could put it in the documents folder, and then when I go into here, we know that my documents is shared. So if I go file, mount, Gary Docs, I think you have to do the mount again. You can see I've got the screenshot of Linux Lite on my virtual machine as well. Obviously you can use the screenshot tool within the virtual machine to create the screenshot as well. And that's really the end of the guide. If you like the video, hit the like button, hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time on Everyday Linux User.